Hello and welcome everybody back to the Dharma Digs podcast, a podcast in pursuit of purposeful living. I'm your host, Taylor Winchester, and as always, I'm grateful that you've decided to take a little bit of time out of your day to stop by and tune into this podcast, so thanks for being here. Today's conversation was actually recorded earlier this week, and it was a wonderful chat with Audrey Baran, who is a dance performer, a maker, and an educator based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Audrey holds an MFA in dance from Hollins University, a BA in dance from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where she also happens to be visiting assistant professor in dance there at UNCC. She's the founder and artistic director of Baran Dance and apprentice company BD2, and she's dedicated to broadening definitions and accessibility of contemporary dance in the Southeast. She also happens to be a registered yoga teacher at the 500-hour level, and she thrives on sharing her love of movement and mindfulness throughout the Queen City and beyond. And that is a lot of what we talked about today, both the mindfulness and movement and some of what she's done to find purpose and a sense of purpose within her passion of teaching others and sharing her love for dance. And I've had the privilege and honor of working with Audrey on some projects in the past, and she's all around a great gal, but also just, a really cool part of the community and the scene here in Charlotte. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you do as well. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the Dharma Digs with Audrey Baran. All right, cool. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Dharma Digs episode. This is going to be a fun conversation. We've got Audrey Baran here with me. Hello, Audrey. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me, Taylor.
Absolutely. So I've kind of given a little brief introduction of my experience working with you and kind of how we came to get to know each other briefly thus far. But why don't you give listeners your little kind of quick spiel on what you're up to these days? Because I know you got a lot going on.
Sure, thanks. So basically, my lot in life is a contemporary dance artist. I perform and I choreograph and I direct a company called Baran Dance. So that is sort of half my life, and my other half, I won't say half, but another facet of my life is a yoga instructor. So I'm certified at the 500-hour level as a yoga instructor. My style is sort of a blend of old school and new school, Western and Eastern schools of thought. So yeah, and I'm not doing that. I'm being a dog mom and a pretend home chef, and yeah, supporting local musicians when I can, or when we used to.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a good starting point talking about the yoga. Are you teaching virtually, or are you still teaching currently under these?
I'm not teaching virtually right now. For the past few years, I've taught yoga. I teach at UNC Charlotte, so I've taught a course in yoga for the past few semesters. So that was the majority of my teaching last, I would say, all of 2020. Which of course we shifted virtually in March of 2020. Yeah, this is 2021. Yeah. So yes, that's been the majority of my yoga teaching. I've in the past I've taught at various studios in Charlotte. B Yoga and Okra were two, and I'm really kind of getting back to enjoying being a student. And I've for the past few years in my own practice, I've been practicing Ashtanga yoga, which is a little bit different from the style that I teach. So it's nice to like sort of be a student in one facet and then a guide in another sense. I was doing some outdoor classes when the weather was nice outside, so I hope to get back to doing that in the spring. But I did a few virtual classes when the pandemic started, and I feel like everyone got really saturated with that the same way we are with everything streaming and online. So I just kind of took a break from that, and maybe I'll restart.
Yeah, it's a virtual world we're living in, but also very strange times. I'm so ready for some warmer weather because same thing. I mean, at least being able to get outside and whether it's partaking in a class or doing, some live music outdoors, it feels safely socially distanced. This time of year is always a challenging time if you're somebody that likes the outdoors, but under these circumstances, even more so. So.
Right. Yeah.
Well, circling back to the teaching component at UNCC, I was kind of curious about that. So, tell me a little bit about how that role of teaching, because are you also teaching dance there?
I am, yeah. So,
Okay.
the yoga class is in the dance department, but anyone can take it. So, oddly enough, most of my students that I've had in that course are not dance majors. They find the class, and it's always at 7:30 in the morning. So I think they're just a lot of them are just looking to get like another couple credits, into their semester, and there's no other classes at that time, so it seems to work well when they show up. But yeah, it's through the dance department, and then I also teach other dance courses for the dance department as well. Um, yeah, and it's oddly very full. I usually have a waiting list for that course, and I think has a max of 30, and I usually have a waiting list too. So it's pretty cool to like see these students who many are brand new to yoga and these ideas and movements, and then to see them evolve over 3 or 4 months is pretty cool.
Yeah, and so I'm sure you found a way to tie in the yoga component with dance and the flexibility and all of those things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, my yoga practice is essential to my total package well-being as a dancer and just like my peace of mind. And it's a daily ritual that I do. And if I don't dance, in a day, I've certainly practiced yoga. So it really goes hand in hand for me. And I know for a lot of my fellow dancers and company members, they are really interested or actively incorporating yoga more into their practices. It's something you can do, more or less on your own, especially now, or online or in a small space, which is really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, yoga is something that I've brought more and more, at least of late, particularly in as a routine. I mean, it's a daily part of kind of my rituals now in the
Mhm.
morning, and I don't do uh, necessarily like a guided class. I just kind of have my sun salutations and that this kind of certain flow of things before I go into meditation. So,
Mhm.
and I remember when I first kind of dabbled with yoga, and that was back when I was actually still playing a decent amount of ball golf, like swinging the golf club and
Mm,
stuff, and
mhm,
thinking about the physical nature of that, how important that can be as far as flexibility, but also the strength component, working all different areas that you're not going to necessarily work out. So I imagine that that
mhm.
probably translates similarly for dance, just keeping the flexibility, but the range of motion and really all facets, I would assume.
Yeah, it's funny, like, in a lot of ways, the actions in yoga and dance is a very, general term, but, are very similar as in, dancers tend to be more flexible and so can do a lot of yoga postures easily sometimes. Other times, a lot of yoga takes a lot of upper body strength, and a lot of dancers don't have that. So it's a great way to incorporate those things without like weightlifting or doing a lot of like bulk building exercises. But then other ways, like dance in a Western sense, tends to be very externally rotated with our legs. So in yoga, it's usually very parallel. So sometimes dancers have a hard time maintaining that inward rotation, whereas, you know, people who practice yoga and dabble in dance, they have a hard time finding that external rotation. So it's just funny to see the things that people find challenging based on what their background is.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Mhm.
Something that I would have never thought about. Obviously, not. I've done some dancing in my days, but it's not nothing. It was back in the attending live music days, I guess you could say. But I think that's a good kind of transition more so back into the dance component. So
Mhm.
you own and operate Baran Dance, which has really, I think, grown to be a really cool community. I was fortunate enough with Elonzo Wesley to partner up with you all
Mhm.
a couple years ago for the Halloween event we did, which is
Yeah.
really, really cool and fun to work with you all. And I think after having worked with you in that capacity really gives me a newfound respect really for what all of you ladies do as dancers there. And but tell us a little bit more about how maybe Baron Dance came to be this contemporary dance company.
Sure. Yeah. It kind of happened by accident. In 2000, excuse me, 12, I was decided to choreograph a piece, and put it in this very small festival that I was a part of in Matthews. And I was teaching at Open Door Studios, which is our home, for Baron Dance, and um, had a bunch of women and dancers who were maybe used to dance a lot in high school and in college, and then had kind of tapered off, but were still trying to keep it really active in their life. And so I just invited some of them to be in this piece and perform. And then we made another piece, and a good friend of mine who's in the company still, Kate Mickham, she sneakily had t-shirts printed that said Baran Dance, and that was like, I was like, well, we have merch now. I guess we're a company, so it was sort of by a happy accident. But yeah, we've been going strong since this is our ninth year going into. So yeah, we, as you know, like do a lot of kind of small informal shows around Charlotte. We love to do things at breweries and Petras and kind of more things that are tied to the music scene, or at least if we don't have that live music component, to at least involve that crowd, the same kind of demographic. And then we do shows that are more formal and like proscenium stages. We've done stuff at the Booth Playhouse and at the Duke Energy Theater in Spirit Square. So I like to maintain that range of like dance is for everyone to view, at least, and it doesn't have to be stuffy um and inaccessible, or intimidating to people.
Yeah, 100%. I think you
Hmm.
do a great job of that. I mean, seeing I would say, that, I think it's safe to say, kind of a diverse demographic of people attending your events, from the collaborative approach, as far as you mentioned, you've done several, I guess, projects with musicians, or incorporating that live music component
Hmm.
for local Charlotte musicians. Excuse me. And I think that is I mean, just in the arts industry or arts scene, being in that collaborative nature is always helpful to opening up doors to connect with new kind of fans or supporters, but also just to really create such a unique experience in that, and which is what I found so fascinating and fun with our work for Zombie Jam. Is
Yeah.
that what we called it?
Yeah.
Zombie Jam?
Yeah. It was so fun. Yeah, I think that's definitely kind of one of our hallmarks as a company, is working with local musicians, and not even musicians that traditionally play for dance. With Elonzo Wesley, we worked with what used to be Sam the Lion. They're now MOA for the most part. We did a whole show with them. The duet Bless These Sounds Under the City, that was kind of our first music collaboration. So, but I mean, I think live music and dance go hand in hand so well, and it just enhances the whole experience for everyone when there's those two forces come together. It's one thing, to watch dance to like a cool piece of music, but when you're seeing it played, and also like the excitement of it being live, because things are always a little bit different, like when they're live or recorded. So it's fun for the dancers too to be like, what's gonna happen? I
Yeah.
don't know.
You have that certain sense of spontaneity or like
Yeah.
improvisation that may have to come into play, even if you have choreographed all your moves, just to kind
Mhm.
of to go with the flow, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, well, what about the recent project? I mean, I haven't, I did go in and vote for you, but I haven't really like dove into all the details of the
Mhm.
partnership with Charlotte Ballet. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I teach at Charlotte Ballet as well. Like I teach everywhere. And their show, usually every February around this time, is called Innovative Works, and it's now called Innovative Direct from the Lab. So it's kind of their more experimental show, where they invite sometimes up and coming choreographers, and also now some of the dancers from the company are choreographing for the show. And this year, partly because of COVID, they decided to open it up to anyone within the organization. So any faculty, any administrators. So they put out a call for people to propose choreographic ideas. And then I'm not sure how many people proposed, but they then presented the ideas to the board of Charlotte Ballet, and they selected three, which then the public voted on. And luckily, yeah, oddly enough, I was one of the selected choreographers. So we just barely started. Of course, things shift with COVID, so we're in a little bit of a holding pattern right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm super excited and like a little bit starstruck to be choreographing for those dancers who, I mean, I grew up watching Charlotte Ballet, so it's so cool to be on the flip side, on the other side of this process now. And they're so talented and so lovely too. They're just like super nice people, so I'm really excited when we do get to restart that.
Yeah, that sounds exciting, and
Mhm,
I have a buddy and his wife they're both big supporters of Charlotte Ballet, and
mhm,
it's been a couple of years, but my wife and I went and saw a show or two there, and just kind of, or performance, I guess you could say.
mhm,
But what they do for the community, I'm sure, is you probably know way better than I do, obviously, the impact from a kind of performance or dance
Mhm.
component that they have on the scene of dancers in Charlotte. So I'm sure a lot of folks find inspiration from that, from them in general. But so, all right, so you're just starting on the actual working with the team.
Mhm.
How can somebody either follow along or be a part of supporting that process, maybe? Or is there? I mean, when does it show? I guess you could say. I don't know if that's the right term in
Yeah,
dance world,
that's
but
fair, yeah. I would say follow Charlotte Ballet on social media. I think all their handles are at Charlotte Ballet or maybe CLT Ballet, but if you search, you'll find them. And the show now is supposed to go up March 12th, I believe. So we're pushed back a little bit. We'll restart rehearsals in February. And it's a very short rehearsal period. So there's I think 8 or 10 works on the concert, and it'll all be at the Charlotte Ballet Center for Dance, which is right on Tryon, and the 10th, I believe, or 11th. Um, and they have a great black box theater there. We've performed there before as well. And so yeah, and of course I'll be sharing and posting things as we get started. So yeah, and if you go on their website to double, well, I'm sure when tickets go on sale, you could find information there too.
cool. And is that
Yeah,
excuse me, is that something that's going to show for like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
it
Like
should
how
be a
many
month
performances?
actually. It'll
Okay,
be
full month.
four weekends at least,
Okay,
especially
cool.
because audiences have to be smaller now, so they might
Yeah.
do a longer run. We'll see.
Very cool. Well,
Yeah,
congrats on that. That's super
thank you.
exciting, and I know it. I think if nothing else, it'll be a great just experience for you, an
Mhm.
opportunity to kind of to really test your skills here. So,
Yeah, definitely.
um,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah. Well, segueing into, I guess we're in segment one, as I call it, but I ask all of my guests in within the structures or the construct of what you do, which is quite vast across the yoga and dance scenes. But tell me a little bit, like, how do you define or how do you feel like you find a sense of purpose through creating this art, through teaching,
Mhm.
and maybe just kind of this lifestyle that you've created and career you've created? Love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, I wanted to be a dancer always, and I am, but as I age, I'm really leaning into my love of teaching more, and I really feel like a an educator at heart. And that's nothing I ever thought I wanted to do. I never really wanted to teach, and I mean, I absolutely love teaching in higher ed at UNCC and community classes with my company, and at Charlotte Ballet too. And I taught at open door studios for a long time, as well. But yeah, I feel like my most self when I'm teaching, whether it be dance or yoga, and just like seeing how these ideas that I've inherited and absorbed over the years, how they come out of me and then are then dispersed to whoever's present in the room. There's not exactly a right or wrong way to teach, I think, and I'm so always figuring it out. And I think that that's part of the joy of teaching too, is that I learn so much from my students, whether they're professionals or students, in college or high school. Yeah, it's an ongoing experiment, I think, which is why I think why I love it so much, and it's a little bit different every day. And yet, like, I love the ritualistic nature of it too, that, like, I have the things that I always go to. And, I mean, you've asked some of my company members, like, they could, like, tell you how my class runs because it's very much the same in some ways and very much different, every day in other ways. But, yeah, I mean, I really feel like my best self when I'm teaching, whether it's, in just a regular class or choreographing in that sense, and being part of the process too. I mean, I still perform in my own work a lot of times, but knowing that that is gonna end sometime. um, y- yeah, just I love the again, like the nuance of every day. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think going back to I mentioned it before, but the community you've created around obviously Baran Dance
Mhm.
and just that collaboration with the scene is really cool, and I can only imagine there's a sense of joy that comes with all of that. But then on the more of the academic level, you're teaching at UNCC, and I venture to guess it probably feels like you're making an impact on these young adults as they're really transitioning, and that can mean so much more than just their taking care of their bodies or being flexible and finding ways to kind of use dance as a means to a physical form, but really more so also just from a standpoint of connecting with young adults. I think I am curious about that a little bit too, because my dad is a professor of creative writing, and
Mm.
I know that he talks a lot about that. It's not with every student, but in your case, you're a little bit more of a niche. I guess what you're teaching is a little bit more niche, as you mentioned, than maybe the intro to creative writing that he has. But do you have any stories, or do you have anything where maybe folks that you've taught in the dance realm have gone on to either circle back around to
Mm.
performing within Baran Dance or in other communities, or have you watched anybody that you've taught and how they've grown from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple dancers who they're now in Baran Dance as a company member. They started I started having teaching one of them in high school when she was probably middle school, at another local studio, and then she joined BD2, which is our apprentice company for high school age dancers. And then she was a student of mine at UNCC, and now she's in Baran Dance. And like I've literally watched her grow up. And she's an amazing artist too, and is starting to choreograph and make her own work. So it's just really cool to watch people's evolution as they figure out themselves as dancers and artists, and as probably, also educators. She's starting to teach. So it's just nice to know that, like, maybe I was a part of that process too. And yeah, I teach a lot of beginning dance students at UNCC, whether they're just like the freshman dance majors, not beginning students, but um, so it's kinda nice to be that introduction to, like, dance in academia, because it's different from being in a studio in high school. And I was also that person. I'm an alumni of UNCC and went from doing competitive dance to now being in this, like, college setting. It's can be a little bit of, like, a culture shock. So I like to kind of be that landing pad for them where it's like, it's still cool. Like, you can still, like,
Yeah.
do all the things and, like, learn about, like, theory and, the ins and outs of dance. And, like anything that's been institutionalized, there's a lot of problems too with dance and how it's taught and documented and what we talk about and what we don't talk about. So I'm trying to shift those things from, like, from the inside a little bit, to especially, with Black Lives Matter and with um, how dance is upheld as this, like, very kind of like white patriarchal system in a lot of ways. So just trying to, like, shift that paradigm of, like, again, dance is for everyone and has been forever, but we just don't always acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think this is me speculating, but I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of the institutionalized uh, scenarios of a lot of things, especially when you're talking about higher ed, sometimes create that this paradigm that needs to be broken. So
Mhm.
I applaud you in that, and I can only imagine that. I know from working with you, I mean, it feels like you have a very inclusive and wide offering, at least as far as the dancers that even worked with us and on the
Mhm.
collaboration. I mean, um, so I'm sure that translates also over to the UNCC side of it, as opposed to just with Baran Dance. But
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's funny because the demographic of dancers is very inclusive. And we have people coming from mostly North Carolina, in the school. But just what you see on a professional level is not always that way. But that's shifting too. So that's really great to see. That's something that I really like about Charlotte Ballet, is that they're really representing lots of bodies in lots of ways, which is awesome. Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like it's an ongoing process of, like, Baron Dance started out with just, like, a bunch of white women, and, like, now we have people of color and men, and it's like, okay, it's different. It can be different if we make
yeah.
it different.
Yeah, I struggle with that a little bit on this
Mhm.
podcast. I personally think about it probably maybe more so than others do, and this is still in its infancy in a standpoint of having guests on. But I just it makes me realize more so that my kind of circle of connections is a bit is not as is not as diverse as maybe it should be. And I do have, friends that are persons of color, but they're not people necessarily, like people that I've worked with in the industry and things that I've tried to incorporate into this. I feel like I'm lacking that. So I've actually reached out to a couple of folks to hopefully kind of like we did when we were working, when I say we, with Midwood Entertainment and Max Music, were working with the folks at the Whitewater Center on Confluence to really try and connect with the folks that maybe are in tune with a different scene within the overall music scene, to really make sure that it's inclusive. And I've got to do a better job of that myself, and trying to engage in those conversations. But it takes all of us making that effort. So one step at a time and one day at a time, and hopefully more folks will follow suit and do that as well. We need it for sure. If never, we need it more now than never. Um,
Totally. Yeah.
well, I think that's also a good opportunity to kind of take what you've done with yoga and dance, and you've told me a little bit about the purpose, but as I've explained on this show before, Dharma is really that definition of purpose and joy and how you find that in life. And I think with some of the quotes you shared with me for segment 2 were awesome, because I think that a lot of that journey and path that I've been on of late has really followed along this seeking of a stronger sense of that purpose. So
Mhm.
let's kind of go in that direction to segment 2, because I'm so excited to hear both from your experiences, but just your thoughts and kind of where these words impact your day to day. And I'm sure as a yoga teacher and going through that training that you've probably studied quite a bit more than I have to this point. Um, but so with that, and we'll talk a little bit. Let's start with the first one. The first quote that I want to pull that you shared is from the Heart Sutra, and
Mhm.
it's all of these quotes are relatively straightforward, but this one is: "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." So for you listeners, I'll say that again because it is so short, just to make
Mhm.
sure you process this. The quote that Audrey shared with me is: "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." And before I let you dig in on this, I'll just remind listeners that typically the way I approach this, I reach out to you in advance and say, give you a little background on what I want to talk about, but then I ask you to share some quotes with me that maybe have really impacted your life. And so that's why Audrey shared this quote with me. And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about why you chose that and what that means to you.
Yeah, and I have to, like, thank you for this, prompt of finding these quotes. Is I went back and dug through my MFA thesis, which was, about how dance can be a form of meditation and the connection between those 2, and, um, I kinda call myself a Buddhist leaning atheist. Like, I'm not quite a Buddhist, but I dabble in it, and I study and I read a little bit. So the Heart Sutra is one of the Buddhist texts, and, I just really love this idea of, like, form and emptiness and structure and chaos, because I think, like, those that, like, for me, that is dance, is like finding structure and form within, like, endless possibilities, which is emptiness, right? So there's nothing. Emptiness is not nothing. It's just like something waiting to happen. So I'm really interested in, like, um, juxtaposing stillness and really frenetic movement, and just thinking about how, like, whatever's happening in my body, because it's my tool, can be a form of prayer, of ritualism, of meditation. It doesn't have to be just sitting still, like, so things can take a lot of forms, and still feel that connection.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
And when I was doing a little more research on it, I'm kind of like you. I mean, I dabble in, if there's any religious text that I find the most relatable at this point in time of my life, I would say it's either from a Buddhist approach or maybe even a Hindu approach at
Mhm.
this point. But I don't necessarily claim one or the other, or claim that any one is better than any other. But a lot of what I've been reading lately, especially thinking of that quote in particular, I listen to a lot of Ram Dass talks, and he's not really a Buddhist lecturer. He's more of a um, I don't even know if he would what he would classify himself as, but I found that I think it crosses paths and intersects with a Buddhist philosophy as well as maybe a Hindu philosophy, and a lot of his learnings were in India. But he talks about that emptiness being kind of the point of it all,
Mhm.
because and I think this is more related on that Buddhist approach, but like the becoming non-attached, or like voiding yourself of attachment to whatever it is in this physical form, because at the end of the day, we're all kind of, he says it, we're all helping each other home. And I think by home, he means where we started, which was essentially just at the soul level. And there was, if there is such thing as emptiness, that is it, and that you don't need these other things. And I don't know how necessarily that relates to the dance world, but in the terms of kind of a spiritual approach to life, I think I found that to be very soothing, and kind of something that um, makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with the concepts or idea of death, and what lies ahead beyond that realm. um, so if we can all become comfortable with that, like that emptiness, when I thought of the word form, I assumed that you meant, and you were taking it to some degree in the dance context, but I also looked at it more so in just the form being the physical nature of things.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that's a great quote, and I loved all of these. So that was from the Heart Sutra, and then you sent me, what did you send me today too? Because I felt like the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, yeah.
Does that, I have not, and he taught the Bhagavad Gita a lot too,
Mhm.
from at least my initial understanding, but I haven't read any of his teachings on that specific text. So what were your thoughts on that? What made you want to?
Yeah, I the Bhagavad Gita is, an ancient Hindu text, and it's one book of the Mahabharata, which is a giant epic story, or several stories, but it's one of the seminal, texts in yoga philosophy, really, and yoga meaning, like, the whole scope of yoga, of, not just physical practice, and I, like, as soon as I said that, went back and, like, looked at my books, and I was like, I have no less than, 4 translations of it, and you can see, like, all the notes and,
Yeah.
ones in my Kindle, and it's just a story that I return to a lot, and it deals exactly with that, with, questions of, like, of dharma, of your purpose, and impermanence, and how death is just a part of life, and it's a cycle, and really getting unattached, or releasing attachments to anything, to life itself, to the fruits of our labor, they talk about a lot, and it centers around this young warrior named Arjuna, and he is on this battlefield and is supposed to engage in battle, and it's basically one side of his family, and his army, so he's supposed to slay his family essentially, and he's like, no, how can I do that, like, why would I do that, and his chariot driver and his sort of guide, Krishna, the whole book is him uh guiding him through, like, these, like, answers to these questions, and it's just rich with so many, just little life lessons. And my, like, dream project is to create a whole evening length dance work on the Bhagavad Gita. So to really contemporize it, and but then just to share these thoughts and ideas with people who might not be familiar with it in a way that's again, accessible and exciting. Um, but yeah, definitely, that's exactly what it's about, is, non-attachment
Yeah.
practice, doing your practice, whatever it is, and just kind of keeping your head down, and just doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's a lot of what I've tried to come, you know, um, closer to, I guess, is that it's so with what I've been diving into is talking about, you mentioned the approach of yoga, not strictly in the physical form, but in the overall, the way I'm kind of digesting a lot of it is in this Ayurvedic approach,
Mhm.
and they talk about these Vedics from 5,000 years ago, and a lot of I don't know how much of that truly crosses over with the Bhagavad Gita, but I feel like they reference it in there quite a bit, and at least thus far, one of the books that I bought. I haven't read all of it because it's kind of an interesting read, and truly digesting it. It's like I do it in pieces, but it's Patanjali's Yoga Sutras,
Mhm.
um, and it's kind of uh, I think it applies in many ways, but it has all these just it's almost like reading a Bible or something that has these literal verses that you can
Mhm.
go look up or go refer back to, and the chapters and the way it's all broken down is very similar to like a religious text, but I think why I'm drawn to that, and maybe even the Buddhist and Hindu kind of approach to spirituality or religion, is because it doesn't there's no fear being pushed
Mhm.
on anybody with it. It's more about just loving awareness and kindness, and but also it I think when I first started, it was I understand why people from where we come from and like live here in the Southeast, like most of us were raised in some ways related to more of a Christian or
Mhm.
um, some type of Western religion as opposed to that. So a lot of people I think are just naturally kind of tune out when you say when you start speaking any words that have like Sanskrit meaning or
Right.
anything
Yeah.
like that. So I mean, Dan, that would be really intriguing to see how you could contemporize it, as you said, and
Mhm.
really kind of deliver the life lessons that obviously you found, and I think a lot of people find within that type of a text, but in a different form. That would be really cool. So I hope that that comes to fruition for you.
Yeah. I'm just putting it out there to the universe, like,
Yeah, yeah.
so this is part of that manifestation. But yeah, the Yoga Sutra is another one that's just chock full of great wisdom. And the sutras themselves are very short, but the and any translation you get has usually pages of explanation and really diving into it. So yeah, it is sometimes kind of like referred to as like the yoga Bible, or the of the yoga with a big Y. Um, so yeah.
Yoga with a big Y. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's been, I mean, eye-opening for me, and obviously you talk about the practice of it, and I think that's a lot of what they talk about, especially when you're contemplating the word dharma is um, you know, practicing and doing more of the things that bring you joy without necessarily tying any expectation to it
Mhm.
or financial means or outcome or whatever. It's more about the doing, and even though they also very often say we are human beings, not human doers or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but it is something that I mean I don't have the exact number of days, but I started this like meditation teacher training back in
Mhm.
September, and I think I've missed 2 days of meditating since then. And not only that, but more specifically, like I've gotten a very kind of I won't say strict, but a very dedicated ritual and routine around it, and the impact that it's had on my life has been just amazing. Just a sense of carrying the things that I start the day out with, which are the yoga practice, meditation, all of that, with me throughout the day. I have definitely noticed, and it's hard to compare directly because we're in such weird and different times in general right now, but um, I can feel those things that I'm practicing uh, carry throughout the rest of my day with me, and I think that's a lot of the purpose behind it. And so now, like, if I miss one day or my meditation in the morning, or like the routine just gets thrown off the slightest
Mhm.
bit, I can feel it the rest of that day, which is
Totally. Yeah.
interesting. All right, so let's move on to another quote that you shared, which is we'll stick with this one since it's a little bit more on the yoga, the stuff I think, anyways. But this is by Barbara Dilley, and it's body firm, mind awake, heart open.
Mhm.
So let me read that one more time for the listeners: body firm, mind awake, heart open, heart open. So share with us what made you share that quote.
Yeah. Barbara Dilley, she's still alive, but she was a dancer with the Merce Cunningham Company in the 70s, and then made her own work, but was really, for the most part, a part of this a collective called the Judson Church group. And they were sort of the like, if modern and contemporary dance were a rebellion against ballet, postmodern was like a rebellion against modern, or any sort of like established dance genre. And she's also I think she would call herself a Buddhist, and she actually started the um, dance program at Naropa University, and I
Oh
think it's
yeah,
in Denver,
Boulder.
which is I want to say it's a Buddhist
Yeah.
education center. Um, so she very explicitly marries dance and Buddhist thought and philosophy, and um, has a lot of practices that I really resonate with and that I use, which are more like in class exercises that are somewhat like moving meditations, you would kind of say. And
Mhm.
again, going back to this idea of like form and structure, like using just movement that only happens on a grid or in a square, or these things that are almost like a mandala, or things that monks would do, um, which I just think is fascinating. And those that little quote is just this sort of I guess mantra that she and her company, when she was directing, would say before a performance, or it just kind of became their thing. And I read it in her book, and it reminded me of like what is it from Friday Night Lights? Uh, Clear eyes, full heart, can't lose.
Uh,
And it was just a nice little like short and sweet few words that summarizes exactly how I strive to approach performance and practice, and just like being there with your heart awake, your mind open, or I forget what exactly it is now,
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah,
I think
body
it's
firm, mind awake, heart open. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
body firm, yeah.
intentional. Yeah, it's kind of like these intentions to the practice, and
Mhm,
that's one of as with the meditation practice that I'm training on and using now is it's a mantra based meditation, but it's primordial sound mantra. So
mhm,
basically, you get this mantra based on the exact date and time that you were born, and it's presumed off of the sound that the earth was making at that time. But anyways,
mhm,
as you use this mantra throughout your meditation practice, but then to kind of as you release the mantra at the end of the practice, you have these four what they call subtle intentions. And that's what it reminded me of. They're different, but it's kind of that short and sweet. And the four subtle intentions that we use on a daily basis are joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, um, peaceful, aware mind, and then lightness of being. But so it's the same. I think in some ways it's similar. It's just like these are the intentions that she's setting forth before each practice or before each performance. And I think if we, regardless of what those intentions are, they obviously should be for anybody. If you're using intentions, I guess I should say they should be not harmful to anybody else, but and for the greater good. But I found a lot of value in using intentions and kind of remembering those again throughout the day.
mhm.
So it's cool to hear that's kind of how you've instilled those within not only I imagine your practice of dance and yoga, but your teaching as well. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, they're all interconnected, and like I said, I learn through teaching, and and my own practice makes me a better teacher in many senses. And yeah, I think the more we just keep whatever it is, our own personal mantra, whether it's something that someone's given to us, or we just create or resonate with. If you're doing your practice, whatever it is, with that thing in mind, like everything will fall into place.
Yeah, yeah. So you feel like
Mm.
you obviously you've read a lot, you've studied a lot, and now teaching. How much would you say you steal from others in a sense? You know, because I think about
Yeah.
that when I do like to share some of the knowledge that I'm learning about
Mhm.
practicing meditation, but it's also like trying to craft your own meditation is not easy. So I've found myself working through taking little tidbits of other meditations that have been guided that I've been a part of to try and figure out my own voice, I guess you could say, within it. Do you feel that's the same for you in teaching dance and yoga?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I steal all the time, and that's basically what dance is just like taking little tidbits of things you've been taught, and things you've seen or absorbed over time, and then sharing it again, whether it's in a performance sense or in a teaching sense. But what I've what I find I do more so is like in my own practice and teaching, I usually let it sink in longer, and I usually try not to be like, "Oh, let me do that thing that I learned," like, but it just happens organically. So, like, if I teach yoga, I'll end with meditation. Usually, whatever I'm saying is maybe something I learned or did years ago that is just like now digesting and like assimilating and coming out. And because I think you can tell when people are forcing it, like when they're like, "Oh, now we're gonna do this thing that blah 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 taught me."
Yeah.
And that's fine, too. But if I think it feels much more authentic when it like organically comes through and out in
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. So yeah, like I do steal, but I'd like let it kind of shift and marinate for a little bit before I put it out there.
Well, I mean, we all do, regardless of, to your point, like what it is you're teaching or
Mhm,
sharing. A lot of times, it's assimilating that information or digesting it, and then letting it come out through you in whatever way. So
mhm,
I assumed that much, but I wanted to ask. Okay, cool. So the last quote is actually a Deborah Hay quote,
mhm,
and I really I enjoyed looking this one up because I was curious, and I saw that um, she's been, I don't know the right way to say what I was trying to say, but I could see where you would draw inspiration off of some of her
mhm,
success and just the career that it seems she's had and the impact that she's had with her career. And for me, looking as an outsider, and for those of you that aren't familiar with Deborah Hay, I'll let Audrey give more of a definition of kind of what she does and where she came from. But what I started to think about was looking at your experience and what you're doing for the community here, and the dance form, and just kind of building this community base. And then I looked at the little bit of research I did on her. It made perfect sense. And I say that in a complimenting way because I think what you're doing here is reflective in a lot of ways of what it seems like she's done
mhm.
within her career as kind of her dharma. So I think you found it, obviously, is one thing I would say. But to get to the quote again, this is Deborah Hay, and she says, "What if where I am is what I need?" Again, another short one, but what if where I am is what I need? And I think that can mean so many different
Mhm.
things to so many different people, and regardless of where you are in your life. But tell us a little bit about why you shared that quote and kind of what it means to you and how you apply it.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Thank you for that thought. Like that is very flattering because I really do look up to her, and she is also a choreographer who was in the Judson Church era and that collective with Barbara Dilley and a number of other folks. But she um, less directly ties in like Buddhist thought and philosophy and or really any sort of spirituality into her teaching or making dance making, but I would say that her process is very spiritual and like intuitive. But she's very much they call her a choreographer's choreographer because she's like she's just there to do the work. Like I've heard, and I've had the privilege to work with her and do a 2 week residency with her a few years ago, 2018, 17. And I was supposed to go back to Austin where she lives and study again with her in last April, and of course that's on hold too. But yeah, I mean, she is really an inspiration in that, like her angle is like the practice is the work. Like we come in and we do our or I say practice a lot because it's not like she's not teaching a dance class. Like we don't go in and it's technique, but it's really, for lack of a better word, improvisation. And she gives you prompts and just these like little ideas. And yeah, I think the what if where I am is what I need is like so relative to everyone and everything, especially right now. Like what what if where we are is what we need. Like God,
Yeah.
um, and I mean, my company dancers know, like, she's maybe beside Bjork, she's like my like number one like fangirl idol. And they made me a little wall hanging that has that exact quote on it, so I really
Oh,
love
cool.
it. But yeah, I think at any time, like whether it's in challenging times and good times, like what if where I am is what I need is it's really a nice a different way of saying like we're gonna be okay and like whatever doesn't kill you make you stronger and all these other cliches. But it just really is and about like where I am also being like how I am in my body. And like I think that's really relatable to dancers as we evolve and like we especially now like we're being more sedentary and it's like oh like am I losing my identity and like what do I do if I don't dance. So I think it's just like a good reminder like this is what I need right now, or what if. And she's really big on questioning and using all these like Cohen sort of riddles, and they can be really kind of maddening because like there's no right answer, right?
Right.
But that's also part of her process is just like throwing out questions, and it's like, oh, I don't know the answers, but it's helping me somehow in some way. So yeah, I really really love her.
Yeah, that's great. And I of course, like initially just take it in more of the kind of that, I guess you could say, spiritual approach of, or not even spiritual, but just remembering that like the grass isn't always greener on
Mm.
the other side type thing. Like sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, I need this, or I want that, or I want to do this, or I need to go work on this project. But sometimes, to your point, like wherever we are right here in this time is also the is the present moment, and sometimes that's just, if not more important than whatever that to-do list could be, because really being present and giving yourself the grace to realize if like if I don't get that one thing that I thought I was going to need to be getting done
Mhm.
by now, maybe that's okay. Maybe that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to work on it when it's supposed to happen, you know.
Right, and that's non-attachment, right? It's like
Yeah,
not being attached to the outcome, to our idea of, whatever we think is supposed to happen, or success, or whatever that means. Um, yeah.
yeah, full circle. Yeah. Well, and I'm reading this book. It's actually called Discovering Your Dharma, and it's by Sahara Rose, who is this young millennial. Um, I guess you would call her an influencer now. Like Deepak Chopra wrote like the foreword to her 2 or 3 books she
Mm.
has, and she's a big proponent of Ayurvedic lifestyle. And um, honestly, like following her online, I can only do so much of it because she does all these dances and stuff, but she's very like in your face and kind of I don't know the best way to describe it. It's not like a art of dancing. It's more of she just wants to dance for the energy and release
Mhm.
sometimes. And
Mhm.
sometimes when you're scrolling, that's a bit much for me. But the book has been a great read, and she did have a quote that I thought about and I snagged. But really, before I go to that, I'll say that she talks about how in search for that dharma, sometimes remembering that everything you've done up until this point is what led you to where you are. And so sometimes you don't, it's easy to kind of question, well, what if we'd have done this versus that? But I think it goes hand in hand with that. The Deborah Hay quote is like, what if where I am is what I need? And really maybe more so just like saying, I am here because of all of these things that I've done up until this point that led me here. So now how do I be more intentional with where I am and what I'm going to choose to do moving forward, and how does that best serve me? And so, a lot of your quotes kind of are very in tune and relative to the stuff that I've been trying to dig into. So it was great to do a little bit of that research.
Well, we have to
So
check
to
out the
get
book.
yeah, I'll share her quote. It's literally, it was like I was reading the page or that section of it, I think the day that you sent these quotes back to me.
Mm.
And so of course, those things are going through my head, but just because we're talking, you're talking dance with you. Um, and again, Sahara Rose is a big fan of dance, but she says dance is not about a performance; it's an expression of your soul through the medium of your body, which I thought was pretty interesting. I think again, I don't think she's looking at it from the choreographic or art standpoint that maybe or approach that maybe you would,
Mm.
um, but just the way the whole it's an expression of your soul through the medium of your body. I think you could get away from that first part, the not about a performance, because I think in a lot of ways with what you're doing and teaching, it is a performance driven
Mm.
art. But the whole expression of your soul through the medium of your body ties back to me to that kind of dharma being the soul's purpose, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but yeah, it's just something that kind of stood out to me as I was reading. Otherwise, I don't think her quotes on dance stand much comparison to yours. But um, well, cool. Let's kind of say, I don't want to take too much of your time, and I realize we're already coming up on close to an hour. So, segueing into segment 3, I'll ask all of my guests to maybe share or highlight an organization. Can be nonprofit, can be just a local company that's doing some cool things. But is there anybody that you want to really shine a light on, or any organization that you'd like to shine a light on?
Yeah, definitely. One or two stick out for sure. Our Bridge for Kids is an amazing organization, and they're an after-school program for immigrant children. And they used to be in the same shopping center where Open Door Studios was, where I was teaching at the time, and I did a series of classes for them. In their, so they came to our studio, and just like the light in those kids is like, it just melts your heart. And there are these like kids who've never danced before, and they're like, you're trying to like, herd cats basically. But they do amazing things, and they've since moved to they're on the campus of Aldersgate, the retirement
Yeah.
home down on Shamrock. Shamrock,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, yeah, and Sil Gonzo's the director there, and she just does amazing things. And they're a place that I would like to get back to working with. So again, just like putting it out there, and but especially now they've done so much for like for the Hispanic community in Charlotte with COVID, and getting people meals, and kids who used to get their meal at school, maybe two of their meals a day. So they do amazing, amazing work. And another one is Heal Charlotte, which is um, a relatively new organization. Greg Jackson is the director of that, and they've actually been in the news a lot lately, trying to build a campus that or a building that is for people who can't afford housing, their housing. So it's basically like a renovating an old hotel, I think, is what they're
Yeah.
doing. And I came across them at first because they do a lot for like uh, preventing gun violence and educating young people. And I made a dance piece at UNCC last fall 2019, in response to the shooting that happened there on campus the previous spring. And just before COVID, actually right at the start of COVID, I was going to work with Greg and with Heal Charlotte to put on this whole concert and like kind of like a week long event about gun violence, and the piece was going to perform there. Long story to say, they do awesome stuff too, and um, just so much for sorry for the BIPOC community in Charlotte, and yeah, they're doing some great things here too.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm not. I've heard and seen and heard on NPR, WFAE them
Mhm,
talking about that project.
mhm.
I guess did he? I guess Heal Charlotte. Maybe they are the ones that got some funding to do what you're talking about, right? Like renovating an old.
Yeah, and I
I
think
was a
that it's an
hotel.
ongoing fundraiser. And I
Okay.
know that actually today, there's a number of restaurants at Camp North End, Leah and Louise included in
Yeah,
them, who are doing a pay what you can soup kitchen, and then all
saw
the
that. Yeah.
donations go to Heal Charlotte, I think, for for this
Oh,
project and
cool.
more.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I reached out to the Colliers to try and see
Mhm.
if maybe they'd be interested in having a conversation about, obviously, I think food can be considered an art and creative passion. So I'd love
Totally.
to, hopefully, I'll be able to chat with them one day because I love following all the stuff that they're doing. And obviously,
Mhm.
they're kicking ass when it comes to serving up some delicious food too. So
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely on my list of places to go as COVID's
yeah,
over.
I know I haven't eaten
Yeah.
there yet either, but
Mhm.
well, cool. Audrey, thank you so much for taking time. It's really been an honor and a pleasure to chat with you and sharing some of your experience and wisdom.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. So tell
Mhm.
everybody real
This is
quick
fun.
before we jump, where should they go to follow you? What are your social handles? I'll post all of this stuff in the show notes, but just for folks that might be driving or listening. So
Yeah, for sure.
barondance.dance, right?
Yeah, our website is baron.dance.
Baron.dance.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like dance is apparently a whatever a tag like com.
Yeah.
And then on social media, we're at Baran Dance. You can follow my yoga stuff at Little Yogi That Could. And I've been failing at that account lately, but I'll get back to it. And
You've
then
got a lot going on,
I
so
do,
I
yeah,
think you get a pass on that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's me.
Cool. Well, yeah, everybody go follow Audrey and follow the projects and be sure. I can't wait to check out the your collaboration and perform or your presentation, I guess, if you will, with Charlotte Ballet. That's going to be exciting. So,
Thank you.
yeah, but thanks again for being here. And yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime, maybe post COVID in person and get a little group together. But
Be awesome. Yeah,
thanks everybody for
cool.
tuning in and
Thank
listening.
you.
Don't forget to go follow Audrey, like and subscribe to the podcast. And I guess we'll see you next week. Namaste.